Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars streak past as her ship dropped out of hyperspace. Around her, 50 human warships emerged from the blue glow of faster-than-light travel. They were humanity's finest vessels, each one representing years of hard work and dreams of joining the galactic community. "Contact established with Federation Command," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. His voice carried the excitement they all felt. This was humanity's first major military operation alongside their alien allies. Sarah nodded and straightened her uniform. 3 years had passed since Earth received its invitation to join the Galactic Federation. It had taken decades of proving themselves worthy, showing that humans could contribute more than just raw materials and primitive technology. Now they had earned their place among the stars. The view screen flickered to life, showing the massive Federation fleet assembled in the Kepler 442 system. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Thousands of alien ships floated in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with technologies humanity was only beginning to understand. The hegemony's crystal vessels sparkled like diamonds. The collective's organic ships pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The Republic's sleek metal fighters darted between larger vessels like schools of silver fish. "Impressive sight," said Commander Rodriguez, Sarah's second-in-command. He was an older man who had fought in the last Earth wars before humanity reached the stars. "Never thought I'd see the day when humans flew alongside aliens." Sarah smiled. "Our children will grow up thinking this is normal. They'll take it for granted." A new voice crackled over the communication system. The universal translator made the words clear, though the tone remained alien and cold. "Human vessels. This is Admiral Zaktor of the Hegemony First Fleet. You will take position in Sector 7 and follow our commands exactly. Do not deviate from assigned coordinates." Sarah frowned slightly. The Federation had promised this would be a joint operation, with human forces working as equals alongside alien fleets. Instead, they were being ordered about like junior partners. She pushed the thought aside. Politics could wait. Right now, they faced something far more dangerous. The Devourers had emerged from dark space 6 months ago. Nobody knew where they came from or what they wanted. The ancient machines simply appeared and began consuming everything in their path. Entire star systems vanished into their massive harvester ships. Billions of lives were lost in the first attacks. "Enemy contacts on long-range sensors," announced the tactical officer. "Devourer fleet approaching from the outer system. Estimated arrival in 4 hours. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Intelligence reports suggested the machines were unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. They adapted quickly to new weapons and tactics. Their technology seemed impossibly advanced, as if they had been building and improving for millions of years. "All ships, this is Captain Chen," she broadcast to the human fleet. "Remember your training. We've drilled for this. Stay close to your wingmen and follow the battle plan. Today we show the galaxy what Earth's children can do." The hours crawled by as both fleets prepared for battle. Sarah walked through the corridors of her ship, stopping to speak with crew members. She saw the same mix of fear and determination on every face. These people had volunteered to leave Earth behind and venture into the unknown. They were explorers, scientists, and warriors rolled into one. When the Devourers finally arrived, Sarah understood why entire civilizations had fallen before them. The enemy ships were massive beyond comprehension. The smallest vessels were the size of human battleships, while their capital ships stretched for kilometers. They moved with perfect coordination like parts of a single mind. "Federation fleet is engaging," reported the tactical officer. "Human forces are to remain in reserve until ordered to advance." Sarah watched the battle unfold on the main screen. Alien weapons lit up space with colors that had no names. The Federation forces fought bravely, but the Devourers were everything the reports had claimed. They adapted to each attack, their shields adjusting to new weapon frequencies within minutes. Their return fire carved through alien hulls like hot knives through butter. "Request permission to join the battle," Sarah transmitted to Admiral Zaktor. "Human forces are ready to assist." The reply was sharp and final. "Negative. Maintain position. You will be deployed when we determine the optimal moment." Hours passed. The Federation fleet began to fall back as Devourer forces pressed their advantage. Sarah could see gaps opening in the alien formations where ships had been destroyed or forced to retreat. Still, the humans remained in their assigned sector, watching their allies fight and die. "Captain," Commander Rodriguez said quietly, Something doesn't feel right about this. Sarah had been thinking the same thing. Why keep the human forces in reserve when the battle was clearly not going well? The Federation had superior numbers and technology, yet they seemed to be losing ground steadily. Then she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The alien fleets weren't retreating randomly. They were pulling back in organized formations, leaving clear corridors that would channel the Devourer advance directly toward the human position. Communications. "Get me Admiral Zaktor immediately," Sarah ordered. The reply came faster than expected. The alien commander's face appeared on screen, his crystalline features showing no emotion. "Human Captain, you are hereby ordered to advance and engage the enemy at these coordinates." A tactical display showed a position deep within Devourer-controlled space. "Admiral, those coordinates would place us completely surrounded," Sarah protested. "Request clarification of the tactical situation." For the first time, something that might have been satisfaction flickered in the alien's compound eyes. "The situation is quite clear, Captain Chen. Your forces will advance and gather intelligence on Devourer capabilities. The Federation requires this data for future operations." The truth hit Sarah like a physical blow. "You're using us as bait. This was planned from the beginning." "Your species was deemed acceptable losses," Zaktor replied without emotion. "The greater galactic community requires information on enemy capabilities. Human forces will provide this intelligence through direct engagement. Your sacrifice will be remembered." Around the bridge, Sarah's crew stared in shocked silence. The tactical display showed the full scope of the betrayal. Every Federation ship was pulling back to safe distances, leaving the human fleet completely isolated. They had been invited to join the galactic community only to be used as expendable test subjects. "Admiral," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. "Humanity trusted you. We believed in the Federation's promise of equality and cooperation." The alien's image flickered as he prepared to end the transmission. "Trust is a luxury the galaxy cannot afford. Your species will serve its purpose. All Federation vessels begin withdrawal to minimum safe distance. Let the humans fulfill their function." The screen went dark, leaving Sarah and her crew alone with the terrible knowledge of their situation. 50 human ships against an enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations. No support, no rescue, and no way home. Sarah looked around at her bridge crew. Fear had been replaced by something harder and more dangerous. These were the descendants of people who had survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. They were the children of a species that had never learned when to quit. "All ships," Sarah broadcast on the human fleet frequency. "You've heard the situation. The Federation has abandoned us, but we're not dead yet. If they want intelligence on the Devourers, we'll give it to them. We'll show these aliens what humans do when backed into a corner." Outside, the enemy fleet began its advance, confident that the trapped humans would provide easy prey. They had no idea what they were about to face. The first wave of Devourer ships approached like a dark tide across space. Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Defiance as enemy vessels the size of skyscrapers moved toward her small fleet. The Federation forces had completed their withdrawal, leaving the humans completely alone in hostile territory. "Enemy weapons charging," reported the tactical officer. Multiple targeting solutions detected across all ships. Sarah gripped the armrest of her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the calm efficiency that came from months of training. They all knew the odds were impossible, but nobody suggested surrender. That wasn't the human way. "All ships, this is Captain Chen," she broadcast to the fleet. "Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. Every piece of data we gather, every second we survive, tells Earth what happened here. Make it count." The Devourers opened fire first. Beams of energy that bent space itself lanced toward the human ships. Sarah felt the Defiance shake as the shields absorbed the impact. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as power levels fluctuated. "Return fire," Sarah ordered. "All weapons full spread." 50 human ships unleashed everything they had. Nuclear missiles streaked through space, followed by particle beams and railgun projectiles. The weapons struck Devourer hulls with tremendous force, sending debris spinning into the void. For a moment, Sarah felt a spark of hope. Then the enemy shields adapted. The next wave of human weapons struck harmless barriers that seemed to absorb the energy completely. The Devourers had analyzed their attack patterns and adjusted their defenses in less than 30 seconds. "Captain, enemy shields have adapted to all our weapon frequencies," the tactical officer reported. Our attacks are having minimal effect. Sarah's mind raced. This was exactly what the Federation had wanted to learn. The Devourers could adapt to any attack almost instantly, making conventional warfare nearly impossible. But humans had never been conventional. Engineering, can we modify our weapon frequencies? She asked. Commander Torres's voice came over the intercom from the engine room. We can randomize the outputs, but it'll reduce our power by 30%. The weapons won't be as strong. Do it, and prepare to overload the main reactor on my command. Commander Rodriguez turned to stare at her. Captain, if we overload the reactor, we take out everything within 10 kilometers, Sarah finished. Sometimes the only way to win is to make sure the enemy loses too. The modified human weapons found their mark, but the effect was temporary. Within minutes, the Devourers had adapted again. Sarah watched as 3 human ships exploded under concentrated enemy fire. The UES Yorktown simply vanished in a ball of white-hot plasma. All ships, new tactics, Sarah announced. We can't outfight them with technology, so we'll have to outthink them. Ramming speed patterns, prepare for close combat. What happened next would have horrified any civilized species in the galaxy. Instead of maintaining safe distances and fighting with advanced weapons, the humans did something completely insane. They flew their ships directly at the enemy. The UES Wellington was the first to make contact. Captain Morrison drove his destroyer straight into the side of a Devourer cruiser at full speed. The impact tore both ships apart, but the explosion took out 2 more enemy vessels that had been flying in close formation. That's how it's done, Sarah said grimly. All ships pair up and execute ramming maneuvers. Make every ship count. The Devourers had never encountered this type of warfare. Their tactical programs were designed to counter advanced weapons and superior technology. They had no protocols for dealing with enemies who simply drove their ships into targets like guided missiles. The human fleet spread out, using their superior maneuverability to get close to the massive enemy ships. The UES Cairo managed to wedge itself inside a Devourer harvester's docking bay. Before detonating its reactor, the explosion gutted the alien vessel from the inside out. But for every enemy ship they destroyed, the humans lost 2 of their own. The mathematics of the battle were clear. They could hurt the Devourers, but they couldn't win through attrition. Captain, we're receiving a transmission, the communications officer announced. It's from Earth. Sarah felt her heart skip. Put it through. The face that appeared on screen belonged to Admiral Helena Marcus, head of Earth's Space Command. Her expression was grim but determined. Captain Chen, we've received reports of the Federation's betrayal. I want you to know that Earth stands with you. Admiral, we're doing what we can, but the situation is hopeless, Sarah replied. We've lost half the fleet already. You listen to me, Captain, Admiral Marcus said firmly. You are not alone. Help is coming. Earth's entire military is mobilizing as we speak. Hold your position and buy us time. The transmission cut out, leaving Sarah staring at a blank screen. Around her, the bridge crew looked stunned. Earth was coming to help, but they were hundreds of light years away. It would take months for any rescue fleet to arrive. You heard the Admiral? Sarah said, turning back to the battle. We hold the line, no matter what. The fighting continued for hours. The humans developed new tactics as they went, using debris fields for cover and coordinating their attacks in ways the Devourers couldn't predict. They learned to target specific systems on enemy ships, going for engines and weapons instead of trying to destroy the massive hulls. Commander Rodriguez proved particularly effective at this new style of warfare. He led a group of fighters in hit-and-run attacks that crippled several Devourer escorts. The enemy adapted eventually, but it took them longer each time. Captain, we're down to 18 ships, the tactical officer reported. Ammunition is running low across the fleet. Sarah looked at the tactical display. They had been fighting for 6 hours and had managed to destroy or damage dozens of enemy vessels. The Devourers were clearly frustrated by human tactics, but they still had overwhelming numbers. All ships prepare for final assault, Sarah broadcast. We're going to hit their command ship directly. If we can take out their coordination, it might give Earth's fleet a chance when they arrive. The largest Devourer vessel hung in space like a mechanical moon. Its hull stretched for kilometers, covered in weapons that could destroy planets. Sarah had no idea how they could possibly damage something that massive, but they had to try. The remaining human ships formed up for one last attack. They had no missiles left and barely enough power for their energy weapons. But they still had their ships themselves, and humans had never been afraid to sacrifice everything for a cause. "This is Captain Chen to all vessels," Sarah announced. "It's been an honor serving with you. Earth will remember what we did here. Make sure the galaxy remembers too." The human ships accelerated toward the massive command vessel. Enemy fire reached out to stop them, destroying ship after ship. The UES Thunderchild exploded just short of its target. The UES Phoenix managed to reach the enemy hull before being torn apart by point defense weapons, but some got through. The UES Ranger drove its nose deep into what looked like a command section before detonating every explosive device on board. The UES Valiant followed seconds later, punching through the hole and exploding inside the alien ship. For a moment, the massive Devourer command ship seemed to stagger. Its weapons stopped firing as internal explosions rippled through its hull. Then slowly the great vessel began to list to one side. "We did it," Commander Rodriguez said in amazement. "We actually damaged their flagship." Sarah smiled grimly as she watched the enemy ship struggle to maintain position. Around it, other Devourer vessels seemed confused, their perfect coordination disrupted. "8 ships left," she said quietly, "and help is coming." The battle wasn't over, but something had changed. The humans had proven that the Devourers could be hurt, could be confused, could be beaten by enemies willing to pay any price for victory. More importantly, they had bought precious time for Earth to prepare. In space around them, the surviving human ships took defensive positions among the debris of their fallen comrades. They were outnumbered 100 to 1, but they were still fighting. They would keep fighting until help arrived or until the last ship was destroyed. The galaxy was about to learn that when you betrayed humans, you didn't just make enemies, you made them desperate. And desperate humans were the most dangerous force in the universe. President Maria Santos stood before the Joint Assembly of the United Earth Government, her face pale but her voice steady. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every nation, colony, and orbital station humanity had built. Behind her, a massive screen showed the last transmission from Captain Chen's fleet. "Citizens of Earth," she began, "3 hours ago we received confirmation of the most heinous betrayal in human history. Our people, our sons and daughters, our finest men and women have been abandoned by those we trusted as allies." The hall erupted in angry voices. Representatives shouted questions and demands for action. President Santos raised her hand for silence. "The Galactic Federation invited us to join their community. They asked for our help against the Devourers. We gave it freely, believing we were fighting alongside friends and equals. Instead, they used our people as test subjects and left them to die." On the screen behind her, footage played of the human fleet's desperate battle. Ships exploding, brave crews ramming enemy vessels, Captain Chen's voice cutting through static as she reported their situation. Every person in the assembly watched in horrified silence. 50 ships, President Santos continued. 2,000 of our best and brightest. They were told this was humanity's chance to prove itself worthy of galactic citizenship. Instead, it was a death sentence signed by aliens who saw us as expendable. Admiral Helena Marcus stepped forward from her position at the side of the stage. Her uniform was crisp, but her eyes blazed with cold fury. "Madam President, Earth's entire fleet stands ready. Every ship, every weapon, every resource we have is at your disposal." The President nodded grimly. "The Federation believes humans are weak because we come from one small world. They think we'll accept this betrayal and move on. They're about to learn how wrong they are." She turned to address the full assembly. "I'm calling for full military mobilization. Every shipyard will work around the clock. Every factory will switch to war production. Every resource Earth has will be devoted to building the largest fleet in human history." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Representatives from Mars colonies offered their orbital platforms. Luna's underground factories promised to triple their output. The asteroid belt mining operations volunteered to redirect their entire production to military needs. Dr. Elizabeth Park, head of Earth's Advanced Research Division, stood from her seat. "Madam President, we have weapons projects that were deemed too dangerous for testing. Antimatter torpedoes, gravity field generators, artificial intelligence combat systems. If you're serious about this mobilization, we can deploy technologies that even we don't fully understand." "Deploy everything," President Santos replied without hesitation. "Our people are dying out there while aliens watch and take notes. Whatever it takes to bring them home and make sure this never happens again." The Great Assembly voted unanimously for total war mobilization. For the first time in over a century, Every nation on Earth united behind a single cause. The betrayal had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping since they reached the stars. In orbit around Earth, the Luna shipyards began their transformation. Massive construction bays that had been building peaceful exploration vessels were retooled for warships. The automated factories that produced consumer goods switched to military hardware. Even the tourist stations were converted to supply depots and crew quarters. Admiral Marcus took command of the largest military mobilization in human history. She established her headquarters on Luna 1, where she could oversee the entire operation. The numbers were staggering even by Earth standards. 3,000 ships were already under construction, with plans for thousands more. "Admiral, the new designs are coming online," reported Captain Williams, her chief of staff. "The engineers are calling the main battle cruiser design the Retribution class, 60% larger than anything we've built before, and armed with weapons that could crack a moon." Admiral Marcus studied the technical specifications. The new ships were built around a simple philosophy: overwhelming firepower delivered at extreme range. They incorporated lessons learned from Captain Chen's reports, with adaptive weapon systems and armor that could resist the Devourer adaptation protocols. "What about the artificial intelligence systems?" she asked. "Fully integrated," Captain Williams replied. "Each ship will have an AI partner capable of making tactical decisions faster than any organic brain." The psychologists say it might be unsettling for crews at first, but the combat effectiveness is undeniable. The mobilization wasn't limited to military hardware. Earth's best scientists worked around the clock to develop new technologies. The betrayal had removed any ethical constraints on weapons research. If the galaxy wanted to see what humans could create, when they abandoned all moral limitations, they would get their wish. Dr. Park's team developed antimatter warheads that could destroy anything within a light second of their detonation. The gravity generators could create artificial black holes or tear space itself apart. The most disturbing development was the neural interface weapons that could overload any electronic system by mimicking the chaotic patterns of a human brain under extreme stress. Meanwhile, volunteers flooded recruitment centers across human space. The betrayal had created a fury that transcended national boundaries, political differences, and personal ambitions. Young people who had never seen combat signed up to crew the new warships. Retired veterans came out of retirement to share their knowledge. Even civilians demanded ways to contribute to the war effort. The industrial transformation was equally impressive. Earth's economy, which had been focused on peaceful exploration and scientific advancement, converted to military production with breathtaking speed. Factories that had made medical equipment began producing weapons. Research stations that studied alien cultures switched to analyzing enemy weaknesses. "The preliminary fleet will be ready in 10 weeks, Admiral Marcus reported to President Santos during their daily briefing. "The full battle fleet will take 3 months, but we can begin operations with the advance force." "What about supplies and logistics?" the President asked. "We're talking about projecting force across hundreds of light years." "Already handled," the Admiral replied. "We're building mobile supply bases and automated repair stations. The new ships are designed for extended independent operations. Once they launch, they won't need Earth support." The President studied the deployment plans. The scale was incredible, but the cost was equally staggering. Earth was spending its entire reserve of resources on this single military campaign. If they failed, humanity might never recover economically or technologically. "There's something else," Admiral Marcus said quietly. "We've been monitoring Federation communications. They're not just ignoring our mobilization. They're actively planning to stop us." President Santos felt a chill. "They're going to attack Earth?" "Intelligence suggests they'll try to intercept our fleet before it reaches the Kepler 442 system." The Federation Council has declared humanity a rogue species that threatens galactic stability. They're mobilizing their own forces to contain us. The implications were clear. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was a war between humanity and the entire galactic community. Earth would be fighting not just the Devourers, but every advanced civilization in the galaxy. "Then we'll fight them all," President Santos said simply. "They made this choice when they betrayed our people. Now they'll live with the consequences." Across human space, the mobilization continued. Children born on distant colonies volunteered to serve on ships they might never see Earth again. Scientists pushed the boundaries of physics to create weapons that violated several galactic treaties. Engineers worked 18-hour days to build vessels designed for one purpose: bringing humanity's children home and making sure the galaxy never forgot the price of betraying Earth. The Federation had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping since they left their homeworld. They had reminded humans why their ancestors had conquered an entire planet, despite being one of its physically weakest species. They had made the mistake of threatening the tribe. In deep space, Captain Chen's battered fleet continued their impossible fight against overwhelming odds. They didn't know about Earth's response yet, but they could feel something changing in the galaxy around them. The Devourers seemed more cautious, more careful in their attacks. Even the Federation monitoring stations had gone silent. Something was coming. Something that would remind every species in the galaxy why humans had climbed to the top of the food chain on a world that tried to kill them every single day. Earth was going to war, and this time they weren't interested in making friends. The first warning came from deep space monitoring stations scattered across 3 star systems. Gravitational sensors detected massive distortions approaching from the direction of Earth's solar system. The readings were unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Admiral Zactor of the Hegemony studied the sensor data from his flagship, orbiting the Federation's primary military base. His crystalline features showed no emotion, but his compound eyes flickered with concern. The human homeworld was generating gravitational signatures that suggested a fleet of unprecedented size. Analysis confirms over 3,000 individual contacts, reported his tactical officer. Energy signatures are off the scale. These readings suggest weapon systems far beyond anything in our databases. Admiral Zactor dismissed the report with a gesture. Impossible. The humans lack the industrial capacity for such a fleet. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. This must be sensor malfunction or some kind of deception. The Federation had been monitoring Earth since the betrayal in the Kepler 442 system. They expected some kind of response, perhaps a diplomatic protest or a small revenge mission. The idea that humanity could challenge the combined might of 1,000 civilizations was laughable. 3 days later, they weren't laughing anymore. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, like a force of nature unleashed. The lead ships were massive beyond comprehension, dwarfing even the largest Federation dreadnoughts. Behind them came wave after wave of smaller vessels, each one bristling with weapons that registered as unknown energy signatures on alien sensors. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Terra's Wrath, the flagship of humanity's vengeance fleet. She was Captain Chen's former mentor, a woman who had spent 30 years preparing for the day when humans might have to fight alone against the galaxy. That day had finally come. "All ships, this is Admiral Vasquez," she broadcast across the entire fleet. 3 months ago, our people were betrayed and abandoned by those they trusted. Today, we begin the long journey to bring them home. The galaxy will learn that humanity protects its own. The Terra's Wrath was a monument to human fury, translated into steel and energy. Its hull stretched for 3 kilometers, powered by reactors that could have supplied entire planets. The weapons systems incorporated technologies that had never been tested in actual combat, designed by scientists who had abandoned all ethical constraints. "Admiral, Federation fleet approaching from the inner system," reported the tactical officer. "Estimated strength 200 vessels, mixed hegemony and collective designs." Admiral Vasquez studied the tactical display without emotion. The Federation fleet was impressive by galactic standards, but humanity was no longer operating by galactic standards. Earth's children had been betrayed, and now the galaxy would learn what happened when you threatened the tribe. "Signal all ships," she commanded. "Weapons free. Show them what Earth's children have learned about warfare." The human fleet didn't bother with warnings or negotiations. They had tried diplomacy with the Federation and been betrayed for their trust. Now they spoke in the only language the galaxy seemed to understand: overwhelming violence. The first volley from the human fleet lit up space like a newborn star. Antimatter torpedoes crossed the void at 90% of light speed, followed by gravity field generators that warped space itself. The Federation ships tried to raise their shields and return fire, but they were facing weapons that operated on principles their science couldn't understand. The UES Vengeance, a Retribution-class battlecruiser, targeted a hegemony crystal ship with its primary weapons. The antimatter warhead didn't just destroy the enemy vessel, it erased it from existence, leaving behind a sphere of twisted spacetime that consumed 2 more ships before dissipating. Admiral Zaktor watched in horror as half his fleet simply vanished in the first 30 seconds of combat. The human weapons ignored shields, passed through armor like it wasn't there, and caused damage that defied every known law of physics. All ships, retreat to secondary positions, he ordered frantically. Request immediate reinforcements from the core worlds. The humans have deployed weapons of mass destruction. But there was no retreat from the human fleet. The Terra's Wrath led a coordinated assault that carved through Federation formations like a blade through tissue paper. The artificial intelligence systems controlling human weapons learned and adapted faster than any organic mind could follow, predicting enemy movements and countering them before they could be executed. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the entire Federation fleet had been destroyed or scattered. Not a single human ship had been lost, though several showed minor damage from desperate enemy attacks. Status report, Admiral Vasquez requested. All ships operational, came the reply. Enemy fleet neutralized. No casualties reported, the Admiral nodded grimly. This had been a test of their new weapons and tactics against a significant enemy force. The results were better than even the most optimistic projections. But the real test lay ahead. In the Kepler 442 system, where Captain Chen's fleet was still fighting for survival, news of the Federation fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy faster than lightspeed communications could carry it. Every major civilization received the same impossible report. Humanity had deployed a fleet that made their combined forces look like children playing with toys. The Collective Council called an emergency session. The Republic Senate declared a state of galactic emergency. The Trade Federation imposed martial law on their core worlds. For the first time in recorded history, the major powers of the galaxy were afraid of a single species, but the human fleet wasn't interested in galactic politics. They had one mission: reach the Kepler 442 system and retrieve their people. Everything else was just an obstacle to be removed or destroyed. The advance toward the battle site became a campaign of systematic destruction. Every devourer outpost in their path was obliterated by weapons that turned matter itself into energy. Federation monitoring stations that tried to track the fleet's movement were vaporized by gravity field generators that created miniature black holes. Admiral, long-range sensors detect the target system, reported the navigation officer. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Admiral Vasquez felt her heart rate increase for the first time since the campaign began. Somewhere in that system, if any of them were still alive, were the people who had been betrayed and abandoned by the galaxy. The thought that they might arrive too late drove her forward with relentless determination. The human fleet spread out as they approached the Kepler 442 system, their sensors reaching ahead to assess the tactical situation. What they found defied belief. Captain Chen's small fleet was still there, still fighting after 3 months of continuous combat against impossible odds. "My God," whispered the tactical officer. "They're still alive. 8 ships left, but they're still fighting." On the main screen, long-range sensors showed the incredible scene. The surviving human ships had created a defensive position in an asteroid field, using debris and wreckage as fortifications. Around them, hundreds of devourer vessels maintained a loose siege, seemingly unable to finish off the stubborn defenders. Admiral Vasquez felt tears running down her cheeks. She had expected to find wreckage and memorial beacons. Instead, she found heroes who had refused to surrender despite facing impossible odds for 3 months. "All ships, maximum speed," she ordered. "Our people have held the line long enough. Time to bring them home." The human Warfleet accelerated toward the battle, their weapons powering up for the fight of their lives. Behind them, space itself seemed to bend under the weight of their fury. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you betrayed Earth's children and left them to die. The Devourers had never faced anything like what was coming toward them. Neither had the Federation forces that were moving to intercept the human fleet. They were all about to discover why humanity had conquered an entire planet, despite being surrounded by creatures bigger, stronger, and better armed than they were. Humans didn't fight fair. They fought to win no matter what the cost, and they never ever abandoned their own. Captain Sarah Chen watched the long-range sensors with disbelief as massive gravitational signatures appeared at the edge of the system. After 3 months of desperate fighting, her mind almost couldn't process what she was seeing. The energy readings were off the scale, larger than anything in her experience. "Captain, those are human signatures," reported Lieutenant Torres, his voice cracking with emotion. "It's Earth's fleet. They came for us." Around the bridge of the UES Defiance, her surviving crew stared at the sensor displays. 8 ships remained from the original 50, their hulls scarred by months of constant battle. They had held their position in the asteroid field through sheer determination and the kind of stubborn courage that had carried humanity to the stars. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "Open a channel to the incoming fleet." The face that appeared on screen was older than she remembered, but unmistakably familiar. Admiral Elena Vasquez had been Sarah's instructor at the Naval Academy, the woman who had taught her that a captain's first duty was to bring her people home. "Captain Chen," Admiral Vasquez said, her voice thick with emotion. "Permission to come alongside." "Permission granted, Admiral," Sarah replied. "It's good to see you." What followed was the most beautiful sight in human military history. The Terra's Wrath, a ship so massive it dwarfed the surviving human vessels, moved alongside the battered Defiance. Docking tubes extended, and for the first time in 3 months, Sarah's crew wasn't alone. The reunion was brief but intense. Sarah crossed to the flagship and found herself face to face with the woman who had shaped her career. Admiral Vasquez pulled her into an embrace that said everything words couldn't express. "You held the line," the Admiral said simply. "You kept fighting when anyone else would have surrendered. Earth is proud of you." "We lost so many," Sarah replied, her voice breaking. "Good people who trusted the Federation and died for it. Their sacrifice will be remembered," Admiral Vasquez promised. "But first we have work to finish. The Devourers are still here, and now we have a Federation fleet coming to stop us." On the tactical display, the situation was clear. The Devourer forces that had been besieging the human survivors were regrouping, their massive vessels moving to intercept the Earth fleet. Behind them, long-range sensors detected another fleet approaching from Federation space. Admiral Zactor had called for reinforcements and was bringing everything the hegemony could muster. "Admiral," Sarah said quietly, "there's something you should know about the Devourers. They adapt to everything. Every weapon, every tactic they learn and counter within minutes. That's why we've survived by constantly changing our approach." Admiral Vasquez smiled grimly. "Then they're about to learn what happens when they try to adapt to human creativity, backed by unlimited resources. All ships combat formation. Show them what Earth's children learned while they were gone." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations, assuming any academies survived what was coming. The human fleet deployed in a formation that had never been seen in galactic warfare. Instead of the rigid lines favored by most civilizations, they moved like a living organism, each ship supporting the others in patterns that seemed chaotic, but were actually perfectly coordinated. The Devourers attacked first, their massive vessels unleashing weapons that had destroyed countless civilizations. Energy beams that could crack planets struck the human shields and were absorbed harmlessly. The adaptive technology that had made them unstoppable for millions of years met weapons designed by species that had never learned to accept defeat. "Target their command nexus," Admiral Vasquez ordered. All ships concentrated fire. The response was devastating beyond comprehension. 3,000 human ships fired as one, their weapons synchronized by artificial intelligence systems that thought faster than organic minds could follow. Antimatter torpedoes created new stars where they struck. Gravity field generators twisted space itself into weapons that ignored every known defense. The largest Devourer vessel, the same command ship that Sarah's fleet had damaged months ago, simply vanished in a ball of twisted space-time. Around it, other enemy ships tried to adapt to the human weapons, but they were facing technology that operated on principles their creators had never imagined. "Enemy fleet breaking formation," reported the tactical officer. "Multiple vessels retreating to outer system." But Admiral Vasquez wasn't interested in half measures. The Devourers had threatened humanity and needed to be eliminated completely. Pursue and destroy. No survivors. The human fleet spread out like hunting wolves, running down every enemy vessel with ruthless efficiency. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for eons were reduced to scrap metal by weapons that turned their own technology against them. Then the Federation fleet arrived. Admiral Zactor led a force of over 1,000 ships, representing every major civilization in the galaxy. They had come to stop the humans before their rampage could spread to other systems. What they found was a human fleet that had just finished annihilating an enemy that the Federation couldn't defeat. "Human fleet, this is Admiral Zaktor of the Galactic Federation," came the transmission. "You are in violation of galactic law and are ordered to surrender immediately. Comply or face the consequences." Admiral Vasquez looked at the tactical display showing the Federation forces, 1,000 ships against 3,000. But her people had technological advantages that made the numbers irrelevant. More importantly, they had something the Federation lacked: absolute commitment to their cause. "Admiral Zaktor," she replied, her voice carrying across space to every ship in both fleets. "3 months ago you betrayed and abandoned our people, leaving them to die for your political convenience. You forfeited any right to give us orders. The Federation Council has declared humanity a rogue species," Zaktor responded. "Your actions threaten galactic stability. Surrender now and face trial, or be destroyed as enemies of civilization." Admiral Vasquez studied the alien commander's image on her screen. This was the being who had condemned her people to death, who had watched them fight and die for intelligence data. The fury that had driven Earth's mobilization crystallized into cold determination. "Admiral," she said simply, "you have one chance to withdraw. Take it." The Federation fleet opened fire instead. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration of what happened when a species that had fought for survival on a death world for millions of years finally abandoned all restraint. The human weapons didn't just destroy the Federation ships. They erased them from existence, leaving behind distortions in spacetime that would puzzle scientists for centuries. The artificial intelligence systems controlling human weapons learned the enemy's tactics faster than organic minds could adapt. Every Federation formation was countered before it could be executed. Every weapon frequency was neutralized within seconds of being deployed. Admiral Zaktor's flagship, the crystal vessel that had seemed so beautiful and advanced, cracked apart under the assault of gravity field generators that created impossible stresses in its molecular structure. The Admiral himself was vaporized along with his ship, never understanding how completely he had misjudged the species he had betrayed. The battle lasted 15 minutes. When it was over, the human fleet floated alone in space, surrounded by the debris of 2 enemy forces. Not a single human ship had been destroyed, though several showed minor damage from desperate enemy attacks. "Status report," Admiral Vasquez requested. "All human vessels operational," came the reply. "Enemy forces completely eliminated. No casualties reported among our forces." Admiral Vasquez nodded and opened a channel to the entire fleet. "People of Earth, today we have answered betrayal with justice. We came to bring our people home and we have succeeded. But more importantly, we have sent a message to the galaxy that will never be forgotten." She paused, looking around at her bridge crew and thinking of the people who had trusted the Federation and paid for it with their lives. "Let every civilization in the galaxy understand this. Earth protects its own. We do not start wars, but we finish them. We do not betray our allies, but we remember those who betray us. And we never ever abandon our people to die alone." The transmission was broadcast on all frequencies, reaching every monitoring station and communications relay in the galaxy. Within hours, every major civilization would know what had happened in the Kepler 442 system. They would know that humanity had deployed weapons that could destroy fleets and technologies that operated beyond their understanding. More importantly, they would know that the species from the small blue world had meant every word they had ever spoken about protecting their own. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Terra's Wrath, watching as the human fleet formed up for the journey home. Around her, the survivors of humanity's first betrayal mingled with the crews who had come to rescue them. The cost had been terrible, but the message was clear. Humanity was no longer asking for acceptance in the galactic community. They were demanding respect, and they had the strength to enforce that demand. The galaxy had awakened something in the children of Earth that had been sleeping since they left their homeworld. They had reminded the universe why humans were the species that had crawled out of the primordial darkness and reached for the stars, and now the stars themselves would remember that lesson.